There are moments in life when you will notice a shift, a gentle but unmistakable movement that you cannot ignore. You may feel a sense of peace in the absence of certain voices, a quiet relief that washes over you even when your mind questions why. This is God at work subtly, quietly, and perfectly orchestrating the removal of what no longer serves your highest good. It is not punishment. It is not rejection. It is divine alignment. Often we cling to relationships out of fear, comfort, or familiarity, forgetting that every person in our life should contribute to our growth, our joy, and our purpose. Toxic relationships, those that drain, frustrate, or obscure our path, are never part of the divine plan for our fulfillment. When God chooses to remove such individuals from our lives, it is an act of love, a sacred clearing, preparing us for the blessings that lie ahead. You may notice repeated patterns, small nudges from within, feelings of discomfort or unease, or opportunities that seem to close doors without explanation. These are signs. They are not coincidences. They are the gentle voice of the divine saying, "Release. Let go, trust me." Trusting in this timing is crucial, for God's timing is never early and never late. It is perfect. When a person is no longer in your life, do not rush to fill the void or seek immediate understanding. Instead, embrace the stillness. Listen to the guidance that comes through silence, intuition, and reflection. In this space, your spirit can grow unencumbered, and the energy that once went into maintaining or justifying unhealthy connections can now be redirected toward your purpose, your peace, and your joy. Sometimes the process is challenging. We are conditioned to resist change, to hold on even when it harms us. Yet the divine asks only that we surrender, not the people themselves, but our attachment to the outcomes, our need for control, and our insistence on understanding every detail. As you release, you will notice a shift in your inner state. Peace replaces conflict, clarity replaces confusion, strength replaces doubt. Every removal is not a loss but a gain, a preparation for the people, opportunities, and experiences that resonate with your true self. Understand that God is not removing people to punish or isolate you. The purpose is always restorative, a gentle redirection toward alignment with your higher path. Life flows more freely when toxic influences are absent, allowing love, inspiration, and opportunity to enter unhindered. Recognize the signs: doors closing, repeated discomfort, intuitive nudges, and the inner knowing that something has shifted. These are whispers from the divine guiding you toward wholeness. Embrace them. Trust them. Let them lead you with confidence, knowing that every removal has a purpose and that the universe conspires for your highest good. In this process, patience is your ally and faith is your guide. Do not rush, do not question, do not fear. Instead, surrender fully to the wisdom that is orchestrating your life. God's timing is flawless, and when you release toxic people, you make space for those who lift, inspire, and align with your highest self. Trust that what is meant for you will not pass you by, and what is not meant will be removed with love. In this trust, you find freedom, joy, and the clarity to walk boldly on the path prepared for you, unburdened and fully supported by divine grace. Often the work of God in our lives is not dramatic or loud. It does not always announce itself with fanfare or make a grand display that immediately captures our attention. Instead, God moves quietly and subtly, orchestrating changes that are sometimes invisible at first glance, yet powerful in their effects. These shifts are deliberate, precise, and infinitely wise, aimed at guiding us toward a life of greater fulfillment, inner peace, and spiritual growth. One of the most profound ways this manifests is in the removal of people, situations, or influences that no longer serve our highest good. While we may not always recognize it at the moment, these interventions are acts of love designed to preserve our well-being and align us with the path that God intends for us. Often, toxic influences in our lives, those that drain our energy, create unnecessary conflict, or undermine our confidence, are gently extracted by divine guidance. This removal is not an accident, nor is it a form of punishment. It is a quiet, loving way of creating space for growth, for clarity, and for new opportunities to enter our lives. These subtle movements may appear as coincidences or natural changes in circumstances, but in reality, they are carefully orchestrated interventions. You may notice that certain relationships fade away without any apparent reason, or that you find yourself naturally distancing from people who bring negativity or unrest. You may encounter closed doors that you had been trying to force open, or you may experience a sudden clarity that allows you to see someone's influence as harmful or draining. These are the quiet ways in which God works, not to control your life, but to guide you gently toward decisions and circumstances that are in alignment with your spiritual and emotional growth. Recognizing this requires an openness to intuition, a sensitivity to inner guidance, and the courage to accept change even when it feels uncomfortable. The removal of toxic influences often coincides with a sense of peace that arises when you let go. While the process may initially be accompanied by uncertainty, grief, or discomfort, it ultimately brings freedom. You begin to notice that your energy is restored, your thoughts are clearer, and your spirit feels lighter. You may also find that your relationships with others improve as the presence of negativity or conflict decreases. God's subtle work ensures that this process is not abrupt or chaotic, rather, it is gradual and harmonious, allowing you to adjust while still receiving the lessons that come from each experience. In this way, spiritual, emotional, and mental growth occurs not through force, but through alignment and release. It is important to understand that this removal is not a reflection of failure or inadequacy on your part. It is a reflection of divine timing and wisdom. By creating distance from influences that hinder your growth, God provides the opportunity for you to step fully into your purpose, to cultivate healthier relationships, and to embrace the opportunities and blessings that await. Trusting in this process requires patience, faith, and a willingness to surrender control. It is an invitation to recognize that not all battles are yours to fight, and that some of the most significant transformations occur through the quiet, unseen hand of divine intervention. Over time, as you reflect on these subtle changes, you will see that they were necessary and beneficial, even if at first they were difficult to understand. They are the gentle but powerful work of God, quietly shaping your life for the better and preparing you to thrive in ways that would have been impossible while burdened by what no longer serves your highest good. Toxic relationships have a subtle yet profound effect on our lives, often leaving us drained, overwhelmed, and stuck in cycles of negativity without even realizing it. These are the relationships where connection does not foster growth, but instead diminishes our energy and undermines our sense of self. Unlike healthy relationships that uplift, inspire, and encourage, toxic connections bring persistent tension, repeated conflict, and emotional instability. They can manifest in many forms: a person who constantly criticizes, manipulates, or controls, someone who is envious or unsupportive, or even a relationship built on dependency and codependence. Over time, the cumulative effect of these relationships erodes our confidence, clouds our judgment, and distracts us from the higher purpose that we are meant to pursue. The challenge is that when we are in the midst of such connections, it can be difficult to see their true impact. We often make excuses, justify behavior, or hold on out of fear of loss or loneliness. Yet the toll is undeniable. Our mental and emotional bandwidth is consumed with navigating conflicts, appeasing moods, or seeking validation from people who cannot give it genuinely. As a result, our spiritual growth is stalled because the energy that should be invested in our development, dreams, and self-discovery is instead diverted toward managing unhealthy dynamics. Toxic relationships also create a continuous undercurrent of stress and anxiety that shapes our perceptions of ourselves and others. They influence our decisions, often subtly, by instilling doubt, guilt, or fear. When we are consistently exposed to negativity, we begin to internalize it, sometimes believing that the dysfunction in the relationship reflects something inherently wrong within us. This internalization can lead to self-sabotage, hesitation in pursuing goals, or the inability to trust our instincts. Our focus becomes fragmented because our energy is spent maintaining equilibrium in situations that should never have demanded such effort. Even when the toxicity is obvious, leaving it or establishing boundaries can be a daunting task because these relationships are often intertwined with emotion, history, or obligation. Despite this difficulty, recognizing their detrimental influence is the first step toward liberation. God's guidance often brings moments of clarity, making us aware of the patterns and influences that are holding us back. These moments can feel uncomfortable at first, but they are essential signals directing us toward freedom and alignment with our purpose. One of the most profound consequences of toxic relationships is the way they prevent us from stepping fully into our calling or life mission. When our energy is perpetually drained, we lack the vitality and creativity necessary to pursue meaningful work or engage fully with opportunities. We may feel stuck in repetitive cycles, unable to break free from distractions, conflict, or emotional turbulence. These relationships act as barriers, whether overtly through interference or subtly through emotional exhaustion. In this sense, they are not merely interpersonal challenges, they are obstacles to our spiritual, professional, and personal fulfillment. Recognizing this reality requires courage, discernment, and the willingness to trust in divine timing. It requires faith that letting go of toxic influences is not loss, but rather preparation for a life aligned with God's purpose. When we step away from these draining relationships, a profound transformation occurs. Our energy is restored, clarity returns, and the space that was once occupied by negativity becomes fertile ground for growth, creativity, and meaningful connections. The absence of conflict allows us to hear our inner guidance more clearly, to make decisions with confidence, and to act in alignment with our true self. God's wisdom in removing such influences is never arbitrary. It is an act of love and protection, clearing the path for us to thrive fully. Understanding this process helps us to release guilt, fear, or obligation and embrace the freedom that comes from stepping into a life of purpose, unencumbered by relationships that drain rather than uplift. One of the most subtle yet unmistakable signs that God is actively intervening in your life is the experience of inner peace when distancing yourself from certain people, even when it initially feels challenging or uncomfortable. This peace is not the absence of emotion or the lack of awareness. Rather, it is a deep, steady sense of alignment that reassures you that the choices unfolding are guided by divine wisdom. Often, the decision to step away from someone who has been a constant part of your life can feel counterintuitive, difficult, or even painful. You may struggle with feelings of guilt, obligation, or fear of judgment, and your mind may be filled with questions about whether you are making the right choice. Despite all this, there can be an undeniable calm that accompanies the separation, a quiet inner knowing that this step is necessary for your spiritual, emotional, and mental well-being. This calmness is a reflection of God's gentle guidance, a divine affirmation that you are being led towards circumstances and connections that will nourish your growth rather than deplete it. It is important to recognize that peace in this context is not always immediate. In many cases, it develops gradually as you release attachments, forgive yourself, and allow the natural course of divine timing to unfold. You may initially feel conflicted, uncertain, or even sorrowful as the person distances themselves or as you consciously create space. However, within this process, God's intervention can be sensed through subtle but profound shifts in your inner state. You might notice a reduction in anxiety, tension, or confusion that previously dominated your interactions. Thoughts that were once repetitive, stressful, or preoccupied with the actions of another person begin to lose their grip, leaving room for clarity, creativity, and self-reflection. This peace is not passive, it is an active sign that you are stepping into a healthier rhythm, one in which your energy is no longer siphoned by influences that do not serve your highest good. It is as if a weight has been lifted, even if you cannot yet fully understand the reason or timing behind it. God's intervention is often indicated not just by the sense of peace itself, but by the way life begins to adjust around you in response. You may find that opportunities previously blocked or relationships previously strained now shift with ease. Situations that once required immense effort or compromise begin to resolve naturally. These changes serve as confirmation that the distance created between you and toxic influences is not loss, but realignment. You are not being abandoned or left to navigate life alone. Rather, God is creating space for your energy, focus, and heart to be invested in what is aligned with your purpose and growth. The peace you experience is both a reassurance and a guide, gently nudging you to trust that letting go is not only acceptable, but necessary. It is natural to question this sense of peace, especially when emotions such as sadness, fear, or nostalgia arise. However, true divine intervention is marked by a quiet certainty that transcends temporary discomfort. The conflict you may feel is not a contradiction of God's guidance, it is simply the mind grappling with change and the unknown. By remaining mindful of your inner state and attentive to the feelings that persist, you begin to recognize the unmistakable difference between the turmoil of toxic influence and the serenity of divine alignment. This discernment is a spiritual gift, a tool that allows you to navigate relationships with wisdom, compassion, and clarity. Over time, trusting this process strengthens your faith, deepens your understanding of divine timing, and cultivates resilience, ensuring that you continue to attract connections that nurture rather than diminish your spirit. Understanding the timing of God's intervention in our lives is one of the most profound lessons of faith. Often, we are quick to judge the removal of certain people from our lives as a form of rejection, punishment, or even misfortune. We ask, why now? Why me? And our hearts and minds struggle to reconcile the loss with our desire for stability and control. Yet, divine timing operates beyond the limitations of human perception. It is never early and never late. It is always perfect. God does not remove people from our lives arbitrarily or out of anger. The purpose behind such removals is rooted in love, foresight, and the desire to align us with our highest potential. When a relationship, friendship, or connection ceases to serve us, it is not a sign of failure or unworthiness, but a divine act of clearing space for growth opportunities and blessings that we cannot yet see. The wisdom in this process lies in the fact that the universe, guided by God's hand, operates in harmony with our spiritual evolution, preparing us for experiences that will nurture, elevate, and sustain us. When toxic or unhelpful people are removed from our lives, it often coincides with significant moments of transition. Perhaps we are on the verge of a new chapter, a deeper spiritual understanding, or a life-changing opportunity. The presence of negative influences in such moments can hinder our ability to fully embrace what is unfolding. God's timing ensures that the interference of energy draining relationships is minimized precisely when we need clarity, focus, and emotional strength the most. This process is rarely abrupt or harsh. Instead, it is often subtle, marked by circumstances that naturally lead to separation, by doors closing, or by an inner recognition that the relationship is no longer aligned with our well-being. At times, it may feel uncomfortable or even painful to let go. We may feel the weight of absence or the pull of old patterns, yet these challenges are part of the divine process, designed to strengthen our resilience, deepen our discernment, and cultivate trust in God's perfect timing. The beauty of this divine timing is that it not only removes what is harmful, but it also creates space for what is beneficial. Life has a natural rhythm, and when one chapter closes, another begins. By allowing toxic or stagnant connections to fall away, we make room for relationships, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with our true purpose. This is the essence of spiritual growth, recognizing that loss is not punishment, but preparation. God orchestrates these changes with precision, understanding that every person we encounter has a role in shaping our journey, whether to teach, challenge, or inspire. When the lessons have been learned and the growth achieved, the influence of certain individuals naturally recedes, making way for new people and experiences that resonate with the energy of our evolving spirit. Trusting this timing requires patience, faith, and surrender. It is not always easy to understand why certain people exit our lives, especially if they were significant in our past. Yet, the peace that accompanies surrender is a confirmation that God's timing is perfect. Rather than resisting or questioning, we are called to release control, embrace the process, and trust that every removal is purposeful. Each separation, no matter how challenging, is a divine invitation to step more fully into our power, clarity, and potential. The blessings and growth that follow are not coincidences, but direct outcomes of this carefully guided process. Over time, reflection reveals that what initially seemed like loss was, in truth, a profound gift, an essential clearing that allowed life to flow more freely and harmoniously. Understanding the timing of God's intervention in our lives is one of the most profound lessons of faith. Often, we are quick to judge the removal of certain people from our lives as a form of rejection, punishment, or even misfortune. We ask, "Why now?" or "Why me?" and our hearts and minds struggle to reconcile the loss with our desire for stability and control. Yet, divine timing operates beyond the limitations of human perception. It is never early and never late, it is always perfect. God does not remove people from our lives arbitrarily or out of anger. The purpose behind such removals is rooted in love, foresight, and the desire to align us with our highest potential. When a relationship, friendship, or connection ceases to serve us, it is not a sign of failure or unworthiness, but a divine act of clearing space for growth, opportunities, and blessings that we cannot yet see. The wisdom in this process lies in the fact that the universe, guided by God's hand, operates in harmony with our spiritual evolution, preparing us for experiences that will nurture, elevate, and sustain us. When toxic or unhelpful people are removed from our lives, it often coincides with significant moments of transition. Perhaps we are on the verge of a new chapter, a deeper spiritual understanding, or a life-changing opportunity. The presence of negative influences in such moments can hinder our ability to fully embrace what is unfolding. God's timing ensures that the interference of energy draining relationships is minimized precisely when we need clarity, focus, and emotional strength the most. This process is rarely abrupt or harsh. Instead, it is often subtle, marked by circumstances that naturally lead to separation, by doors closing, or by an inner recognition that the relationship is no longer aligned with our well-being. At times, it may feel uncomfortable or even painful to let go. We may feel the weight of absence or the pull of old patterns, yet these challenges are part of the divine process, designed to strengthen our resilience, deepen our discernment, and cultivate trust in God's perfect timing. The beauty of this divine timing is that it not only removes what is harmful, but it also creates space for what is beneficial. Life has a natural rhythm, and when one chapter closes, another begins. By allowing toxic or stagnant connections to fall away, we make room for relationships, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with our true purpose. This is the essence of spiritual growth, recognizing that loss is not punishment, but preparation. God orchestrates these changes with precision, understanding that every person we encounter has a role in shaping our journey, whether to teach, challenge, or inspire. When the lessons have been learned and the growth achieved, the influence of certain individuals naturally recedes, making way for new people and experiences that resonate with the energy of our evolving spirit. Trusting this timing requires patience, faith, and surrender. It is not always easy to understand why certain people exit our lives, especially if they were significant in our past. Yet, the peace that accompanies surrender is a confirmation that God's timing is perfect. Rather than resisting or questioning, we are called to release control, embrace the process, and trust that every removal is purposeful. Each separation, no matter how challenging, is a divine invitation to step more fully into our power, clarity, and potential. The blessings and growth that follow are not coincidences, but direct outcomes of this carefully guided process. Over time, reflection reveals that what initially seemed like loss was, in truth, a profound gift, an essential clearing that allowed life to flow more freely and harmoniously. Trusting God's process is one of the most profound and challenging aspects of spiritual growth, especially when it involves letting go of people or situations that have been deeply familiar or emotionally significant. Many of us are conditioned to cling to relationships and circumstances, believing that holding on equates to love, loyalty, or responsibility. Yet, God's guidance often asks for the opposite, a surrender that allows life to unfold according to divine wisdom rather than human expectation. This surrender requires faith, not as a vague hope, but as a deep, unwavering trust that every removal, every closure, and every transition is purposeful and orchestrated for our highest good. Faith in this process is what allows us to release control, understanding that our perspective is limited while God's vision encompasses every dimension of our growth and potential. Faith transforms the act of letting go from a moment of fear or loss into a deliberate choice that aligns us with greater freedom, clarity, and fulfillment. Patience is the companion of faith in this journey. Divine timing is rarely immediate or predictable. The people we are meant to release or the circumstances we are meant to move away from may linger longer than we would like, testing our endurance and resolve. We may feel frustration, confusion, or even sadness as the process unfolds slowly. Yet, patience allows us to remain grounded and present, resisting the urge to force change or rush outcomes according to our limited understanding. It is in this patience that we cultivate trust, learning to honor the rhythm of life rather than opposing it. Patience is not passive waiting, it is an active engagement in the present moment, a conscious choice to observe, reflect, and allow the natural unfolding of divine intervention. Through patience, we gain clarity, insight, and emotional stability, all of which are essential for navigating transitions with grace and wisdom. Letting go is itself an act of love, both for ourselves and for others. Often, we remain attached to toxic or unproductive relationships out of fear of hurting others, out of a sense of obligation, or out of a desire to avoid discomfort. However, clinging to what is no longer aligned with our well-being does not serve anyone. By releasing these connections, we are not abandoning or rejecting the other person. We are honoring the natural flow of life and creating space for growth, healing, and positive transformation. For ourselves, letting go frees our energy, restores our peace, and allows us to pursue our purpose without unnecessary hindrance. For others, it grants them the opportunity to experience their own growth without the entanglement of dynamics that may not serve them either. In this way, letting go becomes a compassionate act, a recognition that love is not control, possession, or insistence on permanence, but a willingness to allow life to unfold in accordance with divine wisdom. Trusting God's process also requires the cultivation of inner discernment. It is not always easy to recognize the moments when letting go is necessary, or to distinguish between temporary challenges and persistent patterns that signal misalignment. Yet, when we practice mindfulness, listen to intuition, and reflect on the effects that relationships have on our energy, peace, and clarity, we begin to see the signs more clearly. God's guidance often manifests subtly through repeated patterns, intuitive nudges, and a sense of peace or relief when distance is created. By remaining attentive to these indicators and embracing the process with faith and patience, we strengthen our ability to navigate life with wisdom, courage, and love. Ultimately, trusting God's process transforms the experience of letting go from one of fear, loss, or confusion into an empowering act of alignment. It allows us to participate fully in our growth, embrace our purpose, and move forward with confidence, knowing that every removal, every shift, and every transition is guided by love, wisdom, and the perfect timing of the divine. By surrendering with faith, exercising patience, and recognizing letting go as an act of love, we step into a life of freedom, clarity, and fulfillment that honors both ourselves and the divine plan for our journey. As we reflect on the journey of life, it becomes clear that God's guidance is both gentle and profound, often moving in ways we cannot immediately see or understand. The removal of certain people from our lives is never an act of punishment or abandonment. It is a deliberate, loving intervention designed to protect our spirit, preserve our energy, and align us with our highest purpose. Life is a journey of growth, and God carefully orchestrates every circumstance, every encounter, and every departure to ensure that we are moving toward clarity, peace, and fulfillment. When we pay attention to the signs, intuition, repeated patterns of hurt, doors closing, or even the simple yet powerful sense of peace, we begin to understand that these shifts are not random. They are messages, nudges, and confirmations that the divine is actively guiding us toward relationships, opportunities, and experiences that nurture rather than drain us. Trusting God's timing is perhaps the most challenging yet transformative aspect of this process. Often, we are tempted to question, resist, or rush outcomes because we cannot immediately see the greater plan. Yet, faith teaches us that the divine works in perfect rhythm. Nothing is early, and nothing is late. Every removal, every closure, and every change is precisely timed to allow growth, to protect us from harm, and to create space for what is meant to enter our lives. Patience is essential in this process. It allows us to remain grounded and receptive, even when the heart feels heavy or the mind is uncertain. By practicing patience, we learn to trust the unseen hand that is guiding us, to surrender the need for control, and to embrace the freedom that comes when we allow life to unfold according to divine wisdom. Letting go, though difficult, is an act of profound love. It is love for ourselves as we honor our need for peace, energy, and purpose. It is love for others as we release them to their own growth, understanding that attachment or interference often hinders rather than helps. In releasing what no longer serves us, we make room for joy, inspiration, and meaningful connections that align with our true path. The peace, clarity, and renewed energy that follow are reminders that divine intervention is always for our good, even when it initially challenges us. Ultimately, this journey is about alignment, aligning with God's wisdom, our inner guidance, and the higher purpose for our lives. It is about recognizing that every change, every removal, and every shift is an opportunity for spiritual, emotional, and mental growth. It is about trusting that life flows in harmony with a higher plan, and that what is meant for us will never pass us by. When we embrace this truth, we find freedom, courage, and peace. We understand that life is unfolding perfectly, and that every removal is a sacred preparation for greater blessings, deeper joy, and a life that resonates with love, clarity, and divine purpose. In the end, trusting God's process allows us to release fear, embrace faith, and step fully into the life we were created to live, knowing that every change is a gift and every removal is a step toward alignment with the divine plan.